Thank you. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Barrett,
Here.
Vice Mayor Rivero, here. Councilmember Ames,
Here.
Councilmember Patena,
Here.
Councilmember Edwards,
Here.
Councilmember Carlott, here, and Councilmember Leone.
Here.
Thank you. The first item up, if you have a request to speak at any point in time, there are forms out in the lobby. Fill it out, give it to the clerk. We'll call upon you at the appropriate time. First item up is consent agenda. The consent agenda are all items. They're listed with a C. They're considered to be routine, have been previously reviewed by the City Council. They will be enacted by one motion unless there is a request to remove any of them. Do I have any requests?
Yes. I would like to remove 10C, 12C, 13C, and 14C.
10, 12, 13, 14?
10, 12, 13, and 14.
Okay, thank you. Any other requests? Hearing none, could I have a motion?
Second.
Moved by Ms. Carlett, seconded by Mr. Ames. Would you please vote? The clerk will record the votes. It is unanimous. Thank you very much. 10C, Economic Development Agreement, Termination, Genome Identification Corporation.
Yes, I would. We had an agreement with them for a couple of years, did we?
Yes, our Economic Development Services Director, Scott White, will answer your questions.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Yes, back in October of 2012, the city entered into an agreement with Genome Identification Corporation. Genome Identification Corporation was a company that used proprietary new technology to perfect forensics DNA testing, part of lab analysis for crimes and solving crimes. Our interest in that prospect was landing the company here in the city of Peoria as a high technology, biotechnology company in furtherance of the EDIS, as well as to create 23 high-paying jobs, high education level positions here in the city of Peoria. As part of our discussions with the company and the way we typically and normally structure our agreements is that a condition precedent to receipt of any funding, they would have to secure a business location in the city of Peoria. In April of 2013, an investment group purchased Genome Identification Corporation, and a condition of that buyout, the company would have to be located in North Carolina. And so since they could not fulfill their obligations under the agreement in terms of locating in the city of Peoria, then the contract or agreement was terminated at their request for non-performance, and then we're bringing it back to council to recommend that we terminate that as none of the funds were spent because we would not issue those funds until A, the business located here, and B, they created the jobs that they said they were going to create.
But we had kind of set some funds aside, so I'm wondering if there's any lessons learned here when we make such agreements, and it's kind of like a holding pattern for us because we think that they are going to come here, and then all of a sudden they don't. Any lessons learned from this in terms of when we do such agreements? Because there was a binding agreement.
I wouldn't characterize it as lesson learned. What we are often faced with is what I refer to as a chicken and egg situation, in that a company that's looking to come here, but for some level of assistance, won't make any commitment to come. And so you make that commitment with appropriate stipulations, with appropriate preconditions to protect our interests, but at the same time, if a company's purchased, if a company at the end of the day decides it needs to be someplace else, then that's kind of an element that's outside of our control, other than making sure that we are not extended in terms of what we wanted in terms of the issuance of funds until our objectives are realized. That was the case here. Before Genome Identification Corporation could pursue in earnest its business plan, its business model, it needed to know how some of its furniture, fixtures, and equipment needs for starting the company would be realized. And that's what we said we would assist with, assuming they met other conditions. It was until April of 13, as I mentioned, that they actually were bought out, and that was a condition of the buyout that they moved to North Carolina.
Okay, good. Thank you. You'll continue to make such agreements, but maybe
Yeah.
always a little wiser.
Absolutely. I mean, because it's never a question of can a project go south, because the answer is always yes, it can. The question is how are we structuring the agreement to make sure that our interests are protected.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
The next one is,
Ms. Carlett?
oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said next.
Thank you. I just want to make a comment about this. I'm familiar with this business. It was a startup. It had a tremendous concept, and it made a discovery that was highly, highly marketable. If this company would have been able to stay in the city of Peoria and grown, it would have established Peoria on a map that it doesn't exist on at this point. It was so well worth us being able to step out and say, we want to create a development agreement so that you can stay in the city of Peoria. It would have been a wonderful opportunity for us. Unfortunately, it was a wonderful opportunity for somebody in North Carolina at the same time. And I just commend you for spotting a real winner when you did like this. And it's something that we should continue to look for. And I really appreciate your eye for economic development in such a seed fashion, in a seed situation, knowing that it was going to grow into something so tremendous. I mean, North Carolina, where all of the medical, the hub is for our entire country, we could have had that hub here, and this could have been the start of it, so it was something great. Thank you for spotting it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further requests to speak, this is 10C, Economic Development Agreement Termination, Genome Identification Corporation. Could I have a motion?
Follow up on it?
Oh, do you wish to speak?
Yeah.
Push the button.
Yeah, no, I think it was an excellent choice, too, and I was disappointed to see this. Is there anything we could have done, you think, in the interim to keep such a company, or that's kind of really why I'm bringing it up?
Well, we were very aggressive in terms of trying to bring it to Peoria because this fit exactly into what we are trying to build. It fits nicely into a nexus with BioInspire, and so it's just an extension of what that whole effort is. At the end of the day, as you know, with any of the business prospects we compete for, it's a competition. And whether it's a competition out of the gate or it's a competition by investment groups purchasing other companies. But, so we don't hold all the cards, but of the cards we hold, we're going to play them aggressively and try to bring in whatever we can. And if it doesn't pan out, then we'll make sure that we have the protections so that, we're not left exposed in what our interests are. But I think you got to be aggressive, and with aggressiveness, sometimes you lose out.
Thank you.
Okay, and once again, this is 10C, Economic Development Agreement Termination, Genome Identification Corporation. Could I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Ames, seconded by Mr. Edwards. Please vote. Clerk will record your votes. It is unanimous. Thanks very much. Next up is 12C, Budget Amendment, Commercial Collection Division, Fiscal Year 2013. Mr. Ames.
Bill Mattingly, our Public Works and Utilities Director, will speak to this one.
Yeah, I'm referring to the item that talks about there was an absence problem, and we had to pay out a certain amount of money to bring someone else in to do the work, an outside firm. Can you address that absence problem? Because I know this has come up before. It came up last couple of years under fire, and how did you become aware of the absence? Was there anything we could have done was it workman's compensation that we had to pay, or what actually are the particulars?
Yes, Mayor and Council, Councilor Ames. This was not a division-wide issue, but what it was a single individual who was out for an extended period of time. One individual was out for a period of 6 months. Now, the area that we're talking about is what we call our commercial roll-off division, and our primary customer in that division right now is our Butler Water Reclamation Facility. Now, the Butler Water Reclamation Facility generates biosolids as part of its process, and they generate 5 to 6 containers per day, which occupies one person basically full-time. Now, in short-term absences, we can generally cover that by reallocating resources from other parts of solid waste, and that we do. But in this case, with a 6-month absence, and we could see that was going on for a period of time, the gentleman eventually retired from the city. We needed to bring in somebody to cover for that. Now, we also looked at our staffing in that area, and council may recall that what we did in this last year's budget, going into FY14, the current year, we actually added another half-time, full-time employee, another part-time employee, to cover for those kinds of things in the future and make sure we have that coverage. So I don't think this is a long-term issue for us. Certainly, we don't have a lot of extra staff to do a lot of, long-term coverage, but I don't see this as necessarily a chronic thing.
Was there another employee you could have moved into this position?
We're continuously moving folks back and forth between our residential, recycling, trash, and commercial divisions to cover those areas. But the reality is, with the need to have a person in every truck every day, it's very difficult to staff these areas with normal absences, let alone when you have an extended absence of this sort.
So promoting someone and then moving someone into that position, we could have probably saved money, but you didn't feel that that was an option in this case.
We do this continuously. What we generally do is you bring in people on a temporary basis. We also have a number of part-time positions. So we use the temporary pool to learn the qualities of these employees and eventually hire them into a part-time position. And when a full-time position is available, we bring them into that. But in this case here, we didn't have that person available. We are doing it continuously. But in this case, we had to bring somebody in and pay them for an extended period.
Now, the person was ill, is that correct? Or?
Yes, he had. I can't get too
in
much into the detail of it because of the situation, but I understood that he had a surgery and then was recuperating for that period of time.
Okay. Was workman's compensation involved also?
I don't believe so.
You don't think so? Okay. But he continued to receive his salary?
Absolutely, and that's the reason we're looking at this, is because we continue to pay that person in their absence, which means we, in effect, are paying two people.
Okay. And you don't like to do that?
When we can avoid it.
Okay, thank you for your comments.
Thank you. You done?
I am, yes.
Other questions or comments? Hearing none. This is 12C, Budget Amendment, Commercial Collection Division, fiscal year 2013. Could I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Ames, seconded by Mr. Patena. Please vote. Clerk will record the vote. It is unanimous. Thanks very much. Next is 13C, Budget Amendment, Facilities Division, fiscal year 2013.
And Bill Mattingly will cover this one also.
Yes, and this one refers to repair and maintenance that wasn't in the budget, and so you had to ask for additional funds. And this just occurred, you were unaware that there might be maintenance in this, with this facility?
Yes, Councilor Ames, what this line item pays for, the overall budget in this area, this is in our facilities division, and the overall budget is about $300,000 a year. And this line item pays for a whole variety of things, some very small repairs, some larger. An example of a larger repair or annual ongoing cost is a fire sprinkler system. In all of the city buildings, we do maintenance and inspection of those systems on an annual basis. Sometimes repairs are necessary as a result of those inspections. And we spent $111,000 on that one line item, on that one specific area in this last year. Other things that are in there are elevator maintenance, cooling system maintenance, electrical repairs, roof repairs. So it's a lot of repairs. And we're talking about whether it's this building, the council chambers, the city hall, our fire stations, our Pinnacle Peak Public Safety Substation, all of the city campuses are included within that budget. In this year, we had a number of items that happened that were unexpected. Some things we can predict. We know that equipment, just like a truck, is going to wear out over time. Unlike our fleet, however, we don't maintain what some might call a reserve fund or a sinking fund or a replacement fund. We deal with those larger repairs either as we predict they're going to fail, and we do that through a budget supplemental process or through a capital improvement. Otherwise, they're lumped into this one line item. So when we get large items, such as we did this last year, we try to keep within budget, but ultimately in this situation we need to come to council for an adjustment. So the ones that really kind of pushed us over the edge this year were We needed to repair and replace the pump on this fountain that's just outside these council chambers. That's our water fountain. Certainly not a critical piece of infrastructure, but certainly part of this campus. The other things were more critical. Those happen to be emergency generators. One, we found through our routine maintenance at our variety facilities, we do routine maintenance and inspection of all our generators. We found that the generator at the Pinnacle Peak Public Safety Substation needed to be repaired, and that related to the gas service from Southwest Gas, so there were significant costs associated with that. Likewise, we did repairs to a couple of others.
And that's the one you mostly refer to in the, on this item.
Yes, sir.
But you're really saying it was a group of funds and you didn't have enough to cover all the
Yes, sir.
repairs on many items? Okay,
It's an aggregation of those, yes.
thank you.
Okay, other questions or comments? Hearing none, this is 13C, Budget Amendment, Facilities Division, fiscal year 2013. Could I have a motion?
So, second?
Moved by Ms. Carlett, seconded by Mr. Ames. Please vote. The clerk will record the vote. Unanimous. Thank you very much. 14C, Sales and Sponsorship Associate Position, Peoria Sports Complex.
And John Sefton, our Community Services Director, will speak to this item.
Yes, and this is an item where you kind of didn't fill one position, but then you filled two at the same cost, and you feel this will be more effective. This looks like something I like here. Can you tell us in the public about this?
Absolutely. What we had was an opportunity to evaluate a vacant position. The marketing and sports coordinator position was vacated. That position was a higher level management position with appropriate salary and budget. With every vacancy, we have an opportunity to really evaluate past work methods, what our current needs are, and develop a new work plan. This is, in essence, converting one FTE position to two FTE positions as a cost-neutral opportunity and really focusing from an experienced manager-level position to utilizing what we need in the sales and marketing element of the sports complex. So we'll actually have two positions at the salary composite that was the single position previously.
So one less chief and two Indians is sales?
You could say that.
Okay.
It's a different function. The previous position was really more community promotions, community collaborations, a different focus through the team negotiations, through the operation and the opportunity for revenue, and in essence, the need for revenue. Management, we've gotten together to really address the need to get out into the community and develop the sales techniques. And it's not just a matter of making a sale and being done, but developing the relationship through spring training, through the special events that we offer at the sports complex and throughout the city. So sales is really more than just getting a transaction. It is about developing the relationship and providing the service to those sponsors and advertisers. So we feel that this is a good benefit. Our association with professional sports, the sports complex itself, we have an opportunity to attract young professionals, or not so young, I guess we can't necessarily identify along that line, but professionals that understand what the commitment is, and we can work to deliver a higher level of revenue receipt based upon having the two folks out there.
Okay, I appreciate that you're doing this, and our taxpayers do too. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, this is 14C, Sales and Sponsorship Associate Position, Peoria Sports Complex. Could I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Mr. Ames, second by Mr. Edwards. Please vote. Clerk will record the vote. It is unanimous. Thank you very much. We now move on to the regular agenda, new business 22R, Amendment, Economic Development Agreement, Maxwell Technologies.
And Scott White is back with this one.
Great, thank you. Well, with the recent good news that the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development approved our Section 108 loan application, well, this is a cleanup amendment. And what do I mean by that? Well, using Section 108 loan funds from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development has programmatic requirements. significant programmatic requirements to show the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development that we have complied with the federal regulations governing the CDBG program. So what we wanted to make sure is that in our development agreement with Maxwell Technologies, we articulated the documentation that they will have to maintain and complete and transmit to us evidencing compliance, so that when we're monitored by HUD, that we can show that we've taken these obligations seriously and have the documentation to prove compliance with the program. So there's two elements of this administrative amendment. One is to list out the documentation that they'll be required to maintain and submit to show compliance with the Section 1.8 loan. The second is to extend for 1 year the deadline for their submission of a foreign trade subzone application. A foreign trade subzone pertains to a federal program, federal trade zone, free trade zone, I'm sorry, program that provides import-export companies with significant financial benefit in terms of reduced fees, tariffs, and the like. So we want to make sure that they can avail themselves of that, and so this just extends for 1 year the time frame that they can submit that application. That portion of it was originally contemplated in the initial development agreement, but it established a deadline that just needs to be extended. So those are the only two elements of this administrative amendment, and I'm happy to try to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Questions? Seeing none. This is 22R, Amendment Economic Development Agreement, Maxwell Technologies. Could I have a motion?
Second.
Moved by Ms. Carlett, seconded by Mr. Leone. Please vote. Clerk will record your vote. Unanimous. Thank you very much. Next is 23R, Council Policy City Special Events.
As the two folks, John Sefton and Jeff Tyner, coming up, I'll say a couple things about this one. The council will recall that you had a policy discussion and study session about the special events policy several weeks ago. Since then, John, Jeff, and City Attorney Steve Kemp have worked to try to make sure that what we're bringing back this evening meets the direction of the council. So John will lead the discussion, but Steve and Jeff are also available to help.
Great, thank you, Carl. So all the things that Carl just said, we visited this back in the budget session. We had the study session back in July 2nd. The general policy contains these identified areas, recognizing the importance of special events in Peoria, defining the purpose, several definitions, key outcomes of what we expect city events to provide, city special event standards as well that articulate some of the details that staff would be responsible for conducting, and classification of special events, an event application process, a special event review committee, and requests for affiliate event status and city support. It's important to recognize, I love this picture. It's definitely it depicts what we do and what goes on within Peoria with respect to special events. This City Council policy will supplement City Code, Chapter 16, as well as the zoning ordinance of City Code. The details, it will detail the general processes, and it does align with council policy goals. So revisions from Draft 1. We basically heard several concerns from the original draft. One was a direction to capture all costs associated with special events, city special events. Those are the city staffing costs as well as revenues, and then the general city fees as well, what we would necessarily forego as far as city fees. This activity is being done separate from the budget process, and staff have already begun capturing this increased level of detail. We had comment on adding signature event description. A promoter or elected official may be part of the planning process. This new policy addresses this with an advisory committee for specific events with verbiage that supports administrative actions, and Mr. Kemp can speak a little more to that detail if necessary. We also had discussion on changing the name of affiliate versus non-affiliate or to promoter. We've reviewed this with the attorneys, And we believe that we've addressed this in the verbiage to recognize that it is typically a not-for-profit that we align ourselves or affiliate our events with. By keeping it clarified as affiliate versus non-affiliate, it provides council a true council-driven decision on whether an event is something that the council decides to support versus a not-for-profit or profit promoter type of an event. And again, it's sort of terminology there, but we feel that through the process we can get to making sure that we've got the right events before us for consideration. And additionally, we had discussion on auditing and the reporting requirements, and those have been addressed as well. We have added that any groups that are providing any affiliate event that is provided support will enter into a City of Peoria agreement. That agreement will detail the expectations of both the recipient as well as us as staff in what we would provide as city support. And we have revised the evaluation process, ensuring that we've got the appropriate level of feedback from event supporters. And with that, I'll open for questions.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Mr. Rivera.
Thank you. I'm going to go through a set of changes that I would like to see made to this draft. I'm going to start with page 3, F1. Under signature events, it states, these events are marketed and implemented to attract a target audience of many thousands from the region and are typically longstanding and funded as part of the department budget. In an effort to make it more transparent, I would like to recommend having a special events budget. So that's my first recommendation.
I'm not quite sure I understand what you're talking about.
Okay.
Where are you going to put this, and when is it going to be?
It'll be part of the budget process. Instead of being identified as part of the department budget, it could be set aside as a special events budget that the council would go through.
Okay.
Vice Mayor, if I may, that actually these items are, all of these signature events, there is a special events budget, and the events themselves have individual budgets as well for review.
Okay. But it's a department budget though, right?
It is within the department budget.
Okay. So my recommendation, if council agrees, I would like to have set aside a special events budget for every event.
Mayor and Council, Councilmember Rivera, Vice Mayor Rivera, are you interested in having that in a non-departmental budget?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. I've got 2 requests to speak. Do you want to speak to that point now?
I want to speak to that.
Carla?
Let's make a comment.
Okay, go ahead. Before you go into that, okay. Let's take this step by step here.
Okay.
Carla. Go.
Yeah, I just want to say that I think it's great that we're going to have this grand opening for Peoria Community Park. It's going to be something that the community needs. and
Mr.
it's
Leone, we're talking about a policy change.
Oh, okay, I'll wait.
Okay. Ms. Carla.
So my question is, you want to take events out of the Community Services Department?
No. I'm not advocating for that. What I'm saying is setting aside a budget. The policy stays intact, whatever the council decides. What I'm saying is I think it's more transparent if we have a special events budget.
Okay, but I'm still questioning how that, I mean, there is a department that governs that, a department that has to come up with that budget, a department that has to prove it to council.
Well, it'll be handled like any other non-departmental budgets that are in our budget.
How does that, can you explain to me how a non-departmental budget works versus how this would work?
Mayor and Council, I'll try and assist with that. The current city budget does have a section called the non-departmental budget. Usually what you would see included within that are certain allocations that don't really affiliate with one certain department. They are not necessarily administered by one department or just providing a certain general benefit. In general, that's what you see that's housed within there. I can try and get some examples for you.
Okay, but events, do they fall in that category?
Well, currently, the special event budget, there is a divisional budget within the Community Services Department. It
Why is
includes
that?
both the personnel that help to serve special events here for the city, as well as the allocation for special events in that year.
So the personnel to serve this budget comes out of community services?
Yes.
So if this were a non-departmental budget item, where would the personnel to serve that come from?
I'm not advocating changing that part of it. So community services will still handle that. What I'm asking for is a separate budget that we could go through it during the budget process. So I'm not saying take away anything from the community services department. What I'm advocating for is a separate budget.
Couldn't we go through the special events budget while we're looking at community services? Isn't that what we did last year?
Mayor and Council, in last year's budget, we happened to go through the special events budget during the Community Services budget just because it was affiliated within the special events division.
So there's no real particular reason to pull it out and make it a standalone.
It's really the council's prerogative to how we want to review that.
But if we did that, we would have to still allot the personnel costs to the community services budget.
That's the assumption from what I'm hearing, is that we would keep the personnel costs within the community services budget.
I'm just talking about the cost for the events.
Right.
I don't know. I'm confused about this.
Okay.
Hang on, both of you. In light of the fact that he has a long list of questions, like a procedural question, by the time he's done with all of this, nobody's going to remember what the first request was. Can we go through and get a consensus on each of these items as he brings them up?
Mayor, you could take each of these as amendments one by one, and that might be the easiest solution. And you could certainly do that versus trying. I'm very concerned about trying to rewrite an entire policy at the end. It might be more efficient if you take these one by one, or if there's significant rewriting, that maybe you provide direction to staff and then have staff do the rewriting and bring it back. I think it's a bad process to do major rewrites and to rewrite the whole thing and try to vote on it at the end.
And I would concur with that, Mayor.
I have about 7, 8 items.
Maybe we should send this back to another study session where we can talk about these items by item and get through it rather than try to do it on the fly.
Sure.
Is everybody okay with that? Mr. Ames?
I would rather, if Mr. Rivero just quickly went through them so that we can get a sense of what they are. Maybe they're not complicated, maybe they can really be grouped together, just so we have a sense of what they are, without discussing them.
Okay, all right, I'll go through each one of them, but just quickly to answer your question, Kathy, I'm not asking to take the events away from community services. All I was asking for is setting a budget aside so it's more transparent of every event that's going on. So we could discuss it like we did this year, because I don't remember discussing events in details like we did this year. We didn't do that on my first year or second year.
Okay.
Does it make sense?
Yeah, and,
Okay.
and it's something that I agree with, discussing all the events separately. I'd like to keep them within community services, though, because that's where the personnel is. So if we could just write that maybe in a different way that says that we will discuss events as a segment of the budget every year.
Okay. And
Why don't you run through the rest of your stuff, and then we'll decide whether we're
Okay.
going to deal with this tonight, or we kick it to a study session.
page 4, F1. Okay. I would like to, on the second sentence, it says, city signature events are managed by cross-functional special events planning committee, which can include a representative from the partner agency, including a private promoter, and I would like to strike out, and are guided by the special event supervisor.
Okay.
On the same page, page 4, page 4, F1, I would also like to delete, at the city manager's discretion, this committee may include an elected official providing input through the city manager to the director. What I would like to add is every signature event could include a council member being part of the planning committee, providing input through the city manager to the director. Also, I would like to add, yes. I would also like to add, however, the director is ultimately responsible for effective and efficient implementation of the direction provided by the cross-functional planning committee overseeing signature events. When an event is being sponsored by an outside entity, the final decision regarding vision and event development remain with the outside entity. And lastly, in that section, an event receives signature status if it's being sponsored by the mayor or council member in accordance to the budget.
Mayor and council, may I ask, Vice Mayor, are you referring to what we would term private promoter events only, or is that for all events that you're referring to that fall in the signature? So, for example, July 4th, which is a city event, would that fall into that same auspices?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Next item, under private promoter events, I would like to strike out affiliate events are developed in conjunction with the city and an outside private sponsor. And the language that I would like to add is affiliate events are developed by outside private sponsors and may seek staff's assistance and input. In that area, I would also like to strike out logistical support and promotional responsibilities can be shared with the sponsor. I would like to add, instead of that language, affiliate events may also be developed in conjunction with the city and outside promoter. When an event is being sponsored by an outside sponsor, the entity makes final decisions regarding vision and event. Couple of items left. Page 7 of 8. And this is more a conversation. I want to have a conversation with both Mr. Tyne and Mr. Septon. There's a concern about the 120 days and applicants having to submit an application and being part of the budget process. What I would like to see is the city of Peoria being open to having events beyond what city staff puts on. An idea that I've been thinking about over the weekend, why couldn't we have a placeholder budget where council can allocate a certain amount of money? So we're not worried about, well, if you didn't submit your application 6 months before the budget, you have no chance. This way we're not scrambling and worrying about the budget, where council can approve events regular via budget process, but if somebody wants to put on an event 2-3 months down the road, they could apply to receive status, and if staff makes that recommendation to the council and council approves, they could have that support versus having 120 days be the wait.
If I may, I think that the 120 days is really just kind of a guideline in order to be able to get all of the things necessary through. If it was something through the budget process that there was a placeholder amount and it was left to the discretion of the department director, to expend those funds. We could be pretty darn quick, but when we want to have things come through, it takes time to get on council agenda. It takes time to get the process engaged, and that 120 days is a relative marker. If there's elements, as you know, with respects to alcohol permits or beer permits, that kind of thing. So there's a lot that goes into the different types of events. But certainly, it would be our vision as well to be as supportive and execute things as fast as possible. This sets an expectation and is a pretty appropriate number based upon what's required.
Okay. So with that said, if somebody applies to receive status after the December deadline, under this policy, what would happen?
Again, having gone through the process, recognizing what council priorities are, what types of events, what types of groups would fall and meet the criteria of the policy, I could see it as being something that, depending upon the dollar amount, with an appropriate range, something that we could easily execute and support appropriately. The challenge, as always, is resource deployment. If there's an event every weekend, that could be a challenge to meet those types of demands.
Okay. Let's go to the last page. I would like to add this language. All city events, regardless of the status, will be required to present a post-event report to the city that will include A, B, and C. The hours of city staff exempt, hours of city staff, and itemization of city support. Okay. Currently, under this draft policy, there's a post-event report that that includes hours of city staff exempt and hourly directly spending planning the event, hours of salary of city staff exempt and hourly who work the event the day of, and itemization of city support. It seems that only applies to this type of event, and what I would like to recommend is that all events, when there's a post report for council, include that. Okay. Two more items that I want to add. Events approved by the council as affiliated will be waived all costs in regards to exempt and hourly employees. Overtime costs or employee hours beyond normal support shall be charged to the private entity's budget approved by the city council. And lastly, fees and costs for usage of city facilities, equipment, resources, services, rental fees shall be waived and not charged to the private entity if affiliate status is approved by the council. Now, Mayor, I would like to add an additional comment. I would be open to bringing this back to study session or subcommittee so we could vet these items more specific. The only issue is that there's a couple of big events around the corner that stand in no man's land. Now, I know at the last council meeting, council had given direction that we would waive fees to use parks and so forth for nonprofits. If that applies to the upcoming events, then I'm open to vetting this in as much detail as possible.
Mr. Ames? You had signed up to speak?
No, I didn't.
Okay, sorry. What's the pleasure of the council? Should we just, this is quite extensive. My personal feeling is this should go back maybe as far as subcommittee and come forward, because there are a lot of things. You're essentially rewriting a large piece of the policy. I think it needs more attention and time than we're going to be able to give it here tonight, because I have a dental appointment at 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. But what's the pleasure of the council? Ms. Carlin?
No, I agree. I think some of these changes are fairly substantial, saying that all if you're affiliate status, all your fees are waived. That's very large, and there's a number of things that I would like to take some time and analyze how their effect, how it affects a lot of other things. I don't think this is something we should do on the fly, and I don't think it's something we should do in an emergency or for anything like that. The upcoming events, they need to be under the current policy. Whatever the current policy is, that's what they were, that's how the person who is having those events decided to have those events within the city of Peoria based on our current policy, not on
I
a
don't
policy
think there's
that's
a current
changed.
policy for that.
We have no current special events policy whatsoever?
General practice has been utilized, but as far as a written document, and that's why we're really trying to get to this point, is to have some clarity brought forward, something that staff can respond to and work from. The general practice would be, we do tend to support events and aid the appropriate way. There are fees. We have a pricing policy in place. So there's definitely policy in some areas that do affect the events.
And those are current and traditional policies, and they are in effect, and I think they should continue to be until we change them.
And didn't we cap city costs for some of these events?
Historically, Jeff may be able to help.
In terms of like overtime pay, not overtime pay, but
In kind.
in-kind contributions?
Mayor and Council, per the discussion in the budget process, we had started to identify the in-kind related costs for some of these different outside private promoter events. So we were kind of going under that practice, and then per our discussion in the study session that we had on this, we were applying that for the current events.
Mr. Ames?
Yes, if I may make a suggestion, a number of changes here, if we could do it, to kind of cross out red so we can see them that way, the old versus the new.
Yeah, I think, if I may respond to that, I think that's a good point. That the number, and we were all kind of writing down, and I know, Mr. Rivera, you looks like you've got some notes. We'd like to get those, but I think Councilman Ames' suggestion is good, to see the changes in context so that we can understand the cumulative impact to the policy would be important if we could do that.
Mr. Rivera?
And in regards to the policy, what we discussed at the last council meeting was that nonprofits wouldn't be charged fees for using a park. What I was trying to say is that that's not part of the policy anywhere. At this point, we haven't addressed that issue. In regards to what's intact, that's fine, but past practice, I believe, has been that for events that had been led by nonprofits, we haven't charged for usage of facilities and any other costs. Application fees, that's completely fine, but I'm talking about using facilities and so forth. And the reason I'm saying this is because with the past events and not having a policy in place, we began tracking hours of exempt, non-exempt employees.
Vice Mayor, I believe it is our past practice that we do charge fees for the use of the facilities, but we absolutely can try and clarify going forward. But I believe our past practice is indeed we do charge, irrespective of their not-for-profit status.
I want to go back to the original discussion here. Should we then send this back to subcommittee or send it back to study session and we get the red line version back? What's everybody's feeling about that?
I would like to keep the discussion going.
Ms. Carlin?
I'd like to have a red line. I'd like to have a study session on it. I'd like to know the implications.
I have a tendency to agree with you because there's fiscal implications and waiving fees and everything else that has been almost a constant theme in your suggestions. I'd like to see what the impacts are in terms of budget. Everybody else? The red line. Red line? Now, do we need to vote on this, or can we do it by consensus?
No, Mayor, I think we have the consensus of the council that this is going to come back to a study session. One of the suggestions I would make for all of council is that if any of you have thoughts about changes, I'd be happy to work with Mr. Sefton and itemize those all in red line, and we will identify by a comment where the changes came from, so that you can see the actual proposed language. As the lawyer, I'm really concerned about trying to draft stuff here on the dais, and so I'd like to work with you and with the staff to make sure we put all these together so you see a complete red line with any changes from any of you that you may think would be appropriate in the study session.
I have one question.
Yeah.
I mean, have a study session before the red line?
No, you'd have a study session, but you could get with Mr. Septon and myself, any council member, and we'd be happy to get any of your input so we could identify them. I would hate to do is have this come back to a study session and then have other council members say, well, I have some changes too, and we kind of go in a circle versus perhaps working with each of you to make sure we get any of your suggestions for that study session.
These would be changes other than Councilman Rivero's.
If any of you do. I don't know if anybody else does or not, but if anybody does, I'd be happy to work with Mr. Sefton to incorporate all of that.
So what you're asking for is any other suggestions for policy changes be sent to you and Mr. Sefton, so that we can have them all written down and set out before us before the study session? Now, do we need to do that as a motion?
No, I think that I got the consensus of the council, and I think we understand that's what you're going to do.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Rivera?
Just a couple of last questions. Want to follow up on the question of using city facilities. So if a nonprofit uses a city park, at this point, we'll charge them?
Vice Mayor, I'm bringing down Brenda Ranke, our recreation manager and resident historian, on this topic. She's been very involved in this for a number of years.
Thanks, Jeff. Yes, if a nonprofit uses our facilities, usually it's the Rio Vista Recreation or Park or Sports Complex, they are charged for those fields. And that is one of our pricing policies, and one of the city codes now is that we do have pricing for that. On a rare occasion, we do have instances where we are asked, maybe it's Relay for Life, that to put those as in-kind fees, but that's a rare occasion that it happens. Sometimes we do it for Black History Celebration. But typically and normally, we have fees attached to all of our facilities in our parks, and we do charge those. And that's by city code.
How do those exemptions work?
The exception works by the mayor has the choice to waive a fee, or we may get a request in because it's one of our diversity committee would like to have that event come into the city. I can only think of a couple times that actually happens during the year that these fees are waived. Other than that, we charge fees.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're done with this item? Everyone understands if you have any other suggestions for changes to the policy, you get them to Mr. Sefton, you get them to Mr. Kemp, and we will bring this back in a future study session.
Yes.
Thank you. Next up is call to the public on non-agenda items. I have no speaker requests. And now the reports from the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor Barrett. Just a couple of items under my report, and John Sefton will speak to both of those. Don't go far, John. Grand opening of Community Park, Pioneer Community Park, and the North Peoria Special Event.
So we do have, and through that budget discussion, we actually allocated funds for a North Peoria event, and the city and our entertainment are very pleased to announce our first big grand scale North Peoria event, barbecue grilling foodie event. We're still working on the final details, but we have secured the best barbecue chef on TV today and the sponsorship of PBS to collaborate and bring together some of the best chefs, and we are getting chefs on board almost weekly. So we've got some great things going on. It will be up in the Lake Pleasant and Happy Valley area, and we want to invite everybody out November 3rd, that is a Sunday, from noon to 4 for some great food, great entertainment, and great excitement. And our next, this was mentioned a little bit earlier, we've got the grand opening, the ribbon cutting of the Pioneer Community Park, our 83-acre, something for everybody there, from sports fields to splash pads to a fishing lake, although we cannot fish yet. They're not quite big enough. They're in there, they're growing. January 1 will be our next grand opening for the lake and the activities associated with that. We want to invite everybody out. Saturday, September 21st, starting at 9 o'clock. We'll have the ribbon cutting and several folks speaking. We'll have refreshments, activities for kids, and we'll be out of there before it gets too hot. And with that, any questions? Thank you.
We may need to take auditions on who's giving these commercials at the end. That's it for my report.
Thank you very much. It's time for reports from the City Council. Mr. Leone.
Thank you, Mayor. I can see John didn't mention Country Meadows. Did you cross me off the list?
No, not at all.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to make sure. I did want to say that on August 22nd, we went to a fundraiser at BJ's for the Yanel 19 Hot Hotters. Station 4 was down there with their fire trucks. It was great. All the kids came down, and when the kids sees a big fire truck, all they want to do is get inside it. And looks like they're going to drive away with it, but it was great. I guess they gave a certain amount of money when you buy your meal. They put in so much money for the Yanel 19 firefighters. So I think it was a great fundraiser, and I hope they made a lot of money that day, because my wife and I, we both went. I attended a League of Cities and Towns in Tucson, Oro Valley, just outside of Tucson, and it was great. We gave a lot of gifts away. I did want to say that Lisa Estrada, Tammy Shriver, Terry Smith, John, Charles, and Rachel, they did a great job on those giveaways. We gave away hats that said "Play in Peoria," sunglasses, and freebies. And I just want to say that the 4 youth kids that went there, they had a great time. They carried the flag, and all 4 of them marched down waving the flag with their sunglasses. I guess they thought they were pretty cool, but they looked great. So I did want to say that we all had a great time there, and the kids learned a lot. They went to a lot of different meetings with other cities with kids. And that's important because they find out what the other cities are doing. Just like when I go, I talk to different people in different cities. Matter of fact, I sat at a table and picked brains of other council people. I sat at a table with some council people from Prescott Valley. I guess HR director, she knew all the council people there. And I sat at their table and tried to pick their brains, but come to find out it was such a small city, so they couldn't pick too much out of their brains. But anyway, we had a great time, and I just want to let you know that it's always good to bring those kids to these events. The last thing I want to say is that I'm glad to see this Pioneer Park grand opening coming up. It's going to be great for the community, and I'm also glad to see North Peoria special event, and I think it's important. I just hate to say North Peoria and South Peoria because it looks like 2 different cities. It's just like Tucson and South Tucson, but it's all one city, and I'm just great that they're having something up in North Peoria, and we're also going to have something in Country Meadows sometime in October. And all these events is going to be just great. If you can make them, please attend. Also, at the community center, they have a lot of things going on during the daytime. Pardon my voice. During the daytime, and at night, once a week. They think they changed it to once a month. They have dancing for the senior citizens. So if you like to dance, come on down, and they have lunch every day. I think it's $2 for the lunch. So come on down to the community center and enjoy yourself. God bless each and every one of you, and God bless America. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Carlin.
Thank you. I just wanted to remind everybody that TheaterWorks and the West Valley Arts Community is hosting a fundraiser this Saturday night. It'll be the Performance Big, and all of the proceeds will be going to the community of Yarnell, who will not be getting, at least at this point, any federal funding, emergency funding for the disaster that they really can't seem to get enough relief for. So I encourage everybody to go out, experience Theater Works, see big, and it all goes to a good cause. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple things. On the 21st, I attended the PUSD groundbreaking of the new elementary school with Councilwoman Carlette and Patena. It was a great opportunity. Saw a lot of kids there that were excited, and they're actually going to help name that school. So I think that's going to be a really interesting activity that one of those kids could actually say, hey, this school I named. It was great turnout. Last week, I also, along with Mr. Leone and the mayor, attended the League of Cities down in Oro Valley. What really struck me as interesting and awe-inspiring was the fact that, as Carlo mentioned, we had 4 of our Peoria Youth Council members attend. The first part of their day, they were in study sessions with kids their own age, but as we sat and had lunch, they had come up to both of us and asked, this is great. We want to continue this, but we really want to see what you guys are doing. We want to go to a couple of the meetings that you guys are going to. So we handed them the agenda and said, pick an item, pick a topic that really interests you. And so a couple of them were interested in economic development, a couple were interested in healthcare and bonding. And so Councilman and Carlo and myself went and took these kids to these different meetings, and they were just really engaged and really liked what they were seeing. So this is a perfect opportunity for them to get more civically engaged, and I hope next year that even more of the Youth Council will come down and participate in that function. Lastly, is I want to invite everybody out tomorrow night. We're having a P83 district street improvement open house from 5 to 7 at the Arizona Broadway Theater. We'll have staff out there showing some conceptual drawings of what we're looking at doing. We're encouraging the local businesses and residents to come out, give us your opinions of what you think so that we can get this project started. We're hoping to get some of that stuff going next year. And that's it, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ames.
No comments tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Patena. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. On September 12th, the former president of Mexico, Vicente Fox, will be coming to the Valley for the 2nd annual Evening of Economic Partners. Fox will be joined by Rosario Marin, former U.S. Treasurer under George W. Bush from 2001 to 2003. They are expected to discuss how to improve trade and job relations between the U.S. and Mexico in this current economic climate. The dinner will take place at Arizona State University in the La Sala Ballroom. In addition to that event on September 12th, I'm working and collaborating with the McCain Institute on putting on a breakfast between Mrs. Fox and Mrs. McCain to discuss human trafficking. And that same day, I'm also working and organizing a different event where the former president of Mexico will be part of a lunch with over 200 pastors from across the valley discussing issues facing our communities. And it's truly a thank you lunch for religious leaders who impact our community in a very positive way. That's it, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. I too went to the League of Arizona Cities and Towns meeting in Tucson because my wife had a medical appointment. I was going to be late for the Resolutions Committee. I want to thank Mr. Edwards for sitting in on that. This is where 91 mayors and council members get together and decide that they tell the staff of the league what items they want them to go lobby the legislature for in terms of getting legislation through. And it's just a nice thing to miss. You've got 91 elected officials. They all have to have the last word. It takes forever to do that. So I really appreciate that, John. The other thing is that I was also selected to have a second 2-year term on the executive committee down there. So with that, we're adjourned, and we reconvene as the Vistancia Community Facilities District Board meeting. I saw you try to get up. Clerk, please call the roll.
Chairperson Barrett.
Here.
Vice Chair Rivero.
Here.
Board Member Ames.
Here.
Board Member Patena.
Here.
Board Member Edwards.
Here.
Board Member Carlott.
Here.
And Board Member Leone.
Here.
The only item is the consent agenda, which contains two items, the minutes and the investment report for the year ending June 30, 2013. Could I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Ames, seconded by Mr. Edwards. Please vote. Clerk will record the vote. It is unanimous. Thank you. Amazingly enough, there are no speaker request forms. So with that, we're adjourned.